A warm good morning to everyone. It is with great delight that I welcome all of you to the International Conference on Urban Transformations, Youth Aspirations and Education in India, organized by National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration and Indian Institute of Technology, Gandhinagar. I'm Vasundhara Krishnan and I'm a student of MA Society and Culture at IIT Gandhinagar. As students of the host institute, we are very happy to have this opportunity to host the event. And on behalf of the student community, I would like to once again extend a warm welcome to all of you present and would like to thank each of you for taking the time and effort to be here today. The lead organizer of the event is Dr. Mona Mehta, Assistant Professor in Humanities and Social Sciences at Indian Institute of Technology, Gandhinagar. She received her PhD in Political Science from the University of Chicago. Prior to teaching at IIT, she has taught comparative politics at Scripps College in Claremont, California. Her research interests include urban transformations and the remaking of city spaces, youth aspirations and skill development programs in urban and rural India, middle class politics, democracy and identity politics in India, and the political thought of M.K. Gandhi. She has co-edited the book Gujarat Beyond Gandhi, Identity, Conflict and Society, and authored several scholarly articles. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Mehta to deliver the welcome note.
Thank you, Vasundhara, and I am a very good morning to all of you. I am so happy to see, so many of you here this early in the morning. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you all to this conference on urban transformations, youth aspirations, and education in India. And we're grateful to the financial and institutional support we have received, very generous, from both IIT Gandhinagar and NIEPA for this event. The IITs are, of course, well known as India's premier institutions for technological education. But what is less known is that we also have nurtured strong programs in the humanities and social sciences. And IIT Gandhinagar's support for this conference attests to this broader intellectual commitment beyond the domain of technical education. And I thank IITGN's director, Dr. Sudhir Jain, for endorsing this vision. NIEPA, of course, is among the country's leading institutions in the domain of education, research and policy, and its collaboration on this conference has been critical in the agenda setting and planning. This conference will explore the important linkages between urban transformations, youth aspirations, and education in India. And given that more than half of India's population actually is less than 25 years old, these questions are at the heart of India's future trajectory as a nation. I also now want to take this opportunity to introduce the two other conference co-organizers, Dr. Manisha Priyam and Dr. Divya Vaid. Manisha Priyam is Associate Professor at NIEPA. She received her PhD in International Development from the London School of Economics and Political Science. She is the author of the book, The Contested Politics of Education Reforms in India, Aligning Opportunities with Interests, that came out with Oxford University Press in 2015. And she has published numerous other articles on higher education and urban marginality. In her policy advisory role, Dr. Priyam has worked with the MHRD, the World Bank, and the UNDP. Divya Vaid is Assistant Professor in the Center for the Study of Social Systems, School of Social Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. She has a DPhil from Nuffield College in Oxford. And her research interests include the study of social stratification, social mobility and inequalities, educational attainment and policy, and the application of quantitative research methods. She is the author of a book, Uneven Odds, Social Mobility in Contemporary India, that came out with OUP in 2018. She has published several articles as the annual, such as in Contemporary South Asia, in the Annual Review of Sociology, etc. And she serves on the editorial board of the SAGE journal, Studies in Indian Politics. Now, we will begin our proceedings with our inaugural panel on education that consists of some of the most eminent names in the field of higher education in India. And they come from very distinct and diverse institutions, both public and private. And these voices, we hope, will really inform a very, very valuable discussion. So before I invite the panelists, I would like to actually introduce them. I begin with Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan, the Vice Chairman of the University Grants Commission, who is our chief guest for this conference. We are honored to have you with us. Dr. Patwardhan is a biomedical scientist and a fellow of the National Academy of Sciences and the National Academy of Medical Sciences. He was the director of the Interdisciplinary School of Health Sciences at the Savitribai Phule University in Pune. He has worked on several policy-making bodies, including the Planning Commission, and has been a consultant with the World Health Organization in Geneva, among others. He is the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine, published by Elsevier, and on the editorial boards of several journals. Among his recent books are Integrative Approaches to Health and Innovative Approaches to Drug Discovery. Thank you for being with us. Next, Dr. Pankaj Chandra, Vice Chancellor of Ahmedabad University. He was the director of the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore from 2007 to 2013, and Professor of Operations and Technology Management at IIM Ahmedabad and IIM Bangalore before he took over as a director, as the Vice Chancellor of Ahmedabad University. He holds a BTech, Bachelor of Technology degree from Banaras Hindu University and a PhD from Wharton at University of Pennsylvania. Professor Chandra was a member of the Government of India Committee on the Rejuvenation of Higher Education, which is also known as the Yashpal Committee. His research interests include supply chain coordination, higher education policy, and high-tech entrepreneurship. His recent book, which has been very well received, is titled Building Universities That Matter, which studies issues of governance and institution building in Indian universities. Now I'm happy to introduce our very own director, Padma Shri awardee, Dr. Sudhir Jain is currently serving his third term as director of the Indian Institute of Technology, Gandhinagar, which he joined as founder director in 2009. He was on the faculty of IIT Kanpur for 35 years, from 1984 to 2019. Dr. Jain is an internationally reputed scholar of earthquake engineering and a passionate academic administrator. He holds a Bachelor of Engineering from the University of Roorkee and a Master's and PhD from the California Institute of Technology in Pasadena. He served as the president of the International Association for Earthquake Engineering from 2014 to 18. He has been a consultant for several major projects and has published more than 150 scholarly articles. So we're absolutely delighted and honored to have each one of you here. I would now like to call upon one of our student volunteers to offer our panelists. I would actually now invite our panelists to please come, and take your seat. And then I will invite our student volunteers to give you a small token of our appreciation. So,
can I request the student volunteers to please hand over the memento to Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan? To Dr. Sudhir Jain. To Dr. Pankaj Chandra.
Thank
to
you.
Dr. John.
Yeah, well, I was going to say we also want to welcome two of our international participants, Professor John Harris and Professor Pramod Bhatta. So please welcome
I would like the
well.
student representative to hand over the memento to Dr. John Harris. And of course to Dr. Pramod Bhatta.
So Professor Harris has come all the way from Canada. Professor Bhatta has come all the way from Kathmandu. We're very happy to have you here. Thank you so much. And I now call upon Manisha Priyam to chair the inaugural panel on education and commence our proceedings.
So without much ado, actually, I'd like to just plunge into the conundrum that brings us together. And I'd like to welcome what are truly policy and institutional leaders from the Indian academia. And what better to have the very best and those who lead tell us about how we are going to lead at least on two of the challenges that define us today as a country, as a nation. Both of these interlinked in many possible ways. Now, youth aspirations, more than just youth as an age and stage category, are an important driver of urban growth. And much of what we look at today or look down upon today as public institutions or sites of higher education that are historical, in ruins, and degraded, simultaneously serve as a site of aspiration for many of those, especially to the north of the Vindhyas, as students trek up peri-urban, rural, even mufassil localities to find that one good institution that is within their reach. And it is a matter of great delight to see that what policymakers and technocratic visions say are sites that are lost to the cause of higher education happen to be sites of aspiration for the young ones. For students from Chandauli, Faizabad, Devariya, it's still the BHU that is their capacity to aspire. And of the demographic changes that we talk about, and certainly our policy documents are replete with, we are sure that more than half of our population is below 25 years. And the moment we play with this fuzzy category of the youth that policy documents have struggled with in terms of defining the age range, if you read our concept note, you will find that various documents, benchmarked from the UN document in the late 90s, talks about a 15 to 24 category. Then India's national youth policy spoke about a 13 to 35-year age group category. But by 2014, this age group became 15 to 29. Now, the Youth in India document 2017 looks at a much broader range of 15 to 34 once again. So fuzzy age categories. But even more than that, what is it that we look at when we talk about the youth in the academia? Now, sadly, the Indian academia, the one category that's it's ignored in a very stark sort of way is the category of the youth. Few studies, but many more newspaper reports that simply link the youth, especially as Professor John Harris has used the term in a 2015 paper with Advani, and he said young students. Now, those young students happen to become categorical variables, especially for the press and uninterrogated categories that talk about youth violence. In the academia globally, however, there are two distinct and sharp sort of ways in which the sociology or anthropology of youth has dealt with the category of youth. One, which has been preponderantly led by psychologists. No surprises here. The Americans here have dominated. And you have a study of deviant youth cultures or the approach to dealing with them as a category that deals with the stress. And that stress is of being somewhere in between. That stress is of adapting to the pressures and challenges of approaching selfhood in a dominantly defined Western and modern paradigm. But the other tradition that comes closer to our sense and sensibilities is the British, more culturally oriented anthropological tradition that looks at working class youth. And these are two leads that we have. Of course, if we go way back, we have studies by Mead and Malinowski on the youth. So we've got some things there. But given where we are in terms of our age and stage of transition as a country, India now should become the world leader in understanding how we understand our own youth as agents of transformation, and indeed urban transformation is just one of those. So without much ado, I'm going to call upon our esteemed panelists, Professor Bhushan Patwardhan. And let me honestly tell you that, Mona had read out this introduction to Professor Bhushan Patwardhan, which is something that we all look up to. It's the kind of CV that we'll probably never have, but always very important for me has been to be able to talk to him and to understand that for his vision of university growth and governance in India, it's the students that are the center of his thinking. It's the transformation that can happen with multidisciplinary lenses. That's been the center of his thinking. So I would now invite Professor Bhushan Patwardhan to lead and open up with his ideas on what he thinks about some of the conundrums that face us today very squarely. Professor Bhushan Patwardhan, an honor to have you here, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Manisha. Priyam, actually, I'm here today because of Dr. Manisha, because I truly respect her passion and sincerity towards the subject. I have heard her earlier on several occasions, and I think such faculty members in India have become really a rare breed. So I'm also happy to visit this beautiful campus. And in the morning, I had a wonderful discussion with one of your faculty member to understand what is happening here. And it is really remarkable that IIT Gandhinagar has come out with such innovative courses, and one of them I found that was on Indian knowledge systems. I was very impressed with the entire pedagogical approach which you have taken and the mix of subjects which you have chosen to give a broader perspectives for the students on this campus. So that was also one of the nice experience that I had this morning, and always good to meet Professor Pankaj Chandra, who actually has given kind of a very good, not only critique, but an excellent roadmap on what are the aspirations for Indian university systems, should be. I am happy that this theme, there are three terms to it. I must uh, accept at the outset that I am the most illiterate in this group, because I come from science discipline, but I enjoy interacting with the students. Probably Professor Manisha invited me to this conference, and government thought that I am also social scientist, and they have given me additional charge as chairman of ICSSR now. So I don't know what I will be able to do, but I'm here more to learn from you than I think you rightly pointed out in the introduction, as well as by the remarks by Professor Manisha, Priyam, that today students, means in the university system, when I came to Delhi, I'm just 15-year-old in Delhi with no aspirations practically to remain in Delhi for a long time. But one of the agenda item was how can we make our current system more student-centric, because since my student days, I have been hearing that student-centric system. All teachers talk about student-centric system, when we are really today in teacher-centric system, because we are not giving any freedom. Forget about student aspiration, we don't even respect their aspirations in our system. Today, before I talk to you for another 10 minutes or so, I must declare that I am not here as Vice Chairman of UGC. So what I am talking are purely my personal views. And if you want me to talk as Vice Chairman of UGC, I'm willing to do that too. But then my talk will be entirely different, So uh, what I thought is in this forum, which is a very small focus forum, and some kind of a policy pointers are likely to come out of this. So I should really be very frank with you what I think about. And I was also happy to read about your background note which you shared, and also saw some of the articles which of Professor John on this subject. And we would like to continue this because we can't do much in a short time, but this is just a beginning. But these threads can be pulled together as we progress, So I was talking to you about youth aspirations. What are the youth aspirations today in India as education is, as a teacher in the university, when I interact with my students, why they are coming to university, first of all, why they are coming to colleges, So I get very, very mixed signals. And those signals, when I see I realized that there are major problems in our own policy by which we have made a major divide between white collar and blue collar. There is no reason why it should be. And we have been talking about it, but still we continue to do that without any interruption. In fact, many times I feel that they are becoming more and more stronger. So especially from rural areas, youth are coming to education, to go to college for joining graduate programs. Their aspiration is to become some civil servant, go and appear for the competitive examinations, or get some good job in some bank, or some stable job somewhere. So that is what the aspirations we have put on them. They are not their real aspirations. Their real aspirations come when you start talking to them. And we don't even, forget about respect, we don't even acknowledge or sense those aspirations in our current system. So what we do when they enter in the college, we give them a prospectus. We tell them that if you want to come to our college, these are the courses which you can do. Once we give that to prospectus, and we don't give actually, we sell prospectus to them. So they have to buy that prospectus, and then they have to go through the syllabus. So they go through the syllabus, they go to the courses, so they know that there are 10 courses, each course will have this syllabus, and we don't stop there, we give them question bank also of that syllabus. We don't even stop there, we give them model answers also. And how do we evaluate them? We evaluate them based on their ability to reproduce our answers. So we don't allow them to think at all in the whole process. The basic tenet of the education is to make students inquisitive. Inquisitiveness should be the basis of the education, which we have been lost. We have lost in the current education system. So this system is terribly wrong somewhere. Professor Pankaj Chandra has talked about in great details in his book. The whole system of our higher education needs a major overhaul. So I'm not going to go into that. I'm restricting myself to student aspirations. So what a little steps, what we are trying to do this is, I'll just talk about two initiatives which UGC has taken recently. After I have joined, we have started doing that. There are several others, but I will not cover for the want of time. So just two I will mention as a representative case. First, we took a step by taking clue from the new education policy, which says that multiple entry, multiple exit, and liberal education. So they are not talking about liberal arts now. Because why liberal arts only? A liberal approach is needed in science also. I am in science. I would like to know more about economics. Why you are preventing me? Today I can't do that. Or liberal engineering for that matter, or liberal medicine also for that matter, because liberal education term has been used in the new education policy, and they are saying that there should be opportunity for students for multiple entry, multiple exit. So without even waiting what will happen and what will be the fate of this policy, we decided that whatever good points of the policy which are implementable, we should start implementing that straight away. So we have established something called as National Academic Credit Bank. And we are saying that universities, and not UGC, at UGC, frankly, we are trying to deregulate UGC. Because we think that we are getting into too many nitty-gritties, and by getting into that, we are putting students on compliance mode, because we are putting so many conditions, and the job of the teacher or student becomes complying those conditions. And that compliance can come through any ways, and the best example of this compliance came through the journal, what you see, the case of pay and publish trash culture, which we saw in India during last 10 years, is precisely the case in point. So we have fixed that also. But National Academic Credit Bank essentially will allow students to open account in this virtual bank, like you open account by putting money in bank. And we are saying why students should wait till such time she comes to the college, They can start learning much before also. If they want, like college board has advanced program, AP program, why not if somebody is learning Bharatnatyam, why you are not respecting that? That is a great effort, there's serious effort. Or somebody is going for some music classes and get some master in that. Why you are ignoring that? Why we are differentiating between so-called curricular, which we think that it is curricular, and co-curricular, which we think that co or extracurricular? Why the whole thing cannot be seamlessly packaged as curricular? Because all these experiences are important for student as a whole. So these students will be able to, university should really decide how many credits you want if your degree is to be awarded. That university's decision. Now university should also decide how many core credits you need if you want to award a degree in particular subject. So if you want BA in English, how many English credits that student should have. That's what university should decide. And rest of all, students should be master. So then rest of the credits from wherever that student wants, it should be allowed. And this particular mechanism will allow that to happen, so that student from anywhere in the world, they will be able to get. Today, I have seen Erasmus Mundus students suffering. They go out, spend 6 months, do hard work, come back, and nobody is recognizing their credits. And they are running from pillar to post to just get their credits recognized. Bright, brilliant students. So all these problems we hope that we'll be able to address by this bank. And at present, this idea has been accepted by the Commission in principle, and we are in a process of getting into the regulations phase. So very soon. We have to be careful while making regulations to ensure that the basic spirit is not compromised while making regulations. That itself is a major problem. The second example I want to give you of another baby step which we have taken to boost or to respect or to allow student aspiration to flourish in education is what we have named it provisionally as semester outreach program. And we are saying that why teachers are monopolizing teaching. Why we are saying that what we teach inside our classrooms or inside our campuses is only teaching. Because teaching happens all over. Teaching starts from home, all of us know. And teaching happens in the community. That also all of us know, but we don't respect that. So how can we do that? And there have been some attempts, earlier also. But we were considering that as extra or co-curricular such as NSS or NCC. So we are saying that let's talk about NCC 2.0 or NSS 2.0. Because NCC was enacted sometime in 1949-50, somewhere of that time. And NSS was 10 years after that, during some 59 or something, After that, there has been no critical review of these, and many people who are seriously working with NSS have, in private, have expressed their concern that these programs have become more like a photo opportunity programs, and the original spirit of this program is getting lost. So what to do about it? So we are saying that hobby is good, and co-curricular, extracurricular is good, but that good is not good enough to meet aspirations of the youth. So what can we do to meet their aspirations is let them learn in the community. So we are saying that let urban students go to rural areas, rural students go to urban areas, and this is typically study abroad program. All of you may have seen that most of the top universities have study abroad program, But study abroad doesn't mean that you have to go outside your country. Within your country, there are several countries, So students from Bihar going to Kerala is study abroad program, or elsewhere, anywhere. So that study abroad principle we have taken, but it will be a structured program. It is not going to be a free will. You can't go and do whatever you want to do. It will be a creditized program. Therefore, it will be a structured program. But student will be master to choose. They will be able to choose that. Nothing of this kind, whatever I am telling you, is going to be compulsory. We will have to make the programs attractive in such a way that students opt for it and not make that compulsory. Because the moment you make something compulsory, then we face what typically is called as Campbell effect, or Campbell's law becomes operational there. So here the program will be in one semester. Student, for example, can decide and go and work in Marathwada region with drought-prone communities or stay in farmers for 1 month. No, I can tell you that if they do that, you don't have to give them any lessons on moralities and values. Students will be changed on their own automatically when they see the real India and how people are living there. And not only they will be able to help rural communities. If economic students go there, they will be able to really tell them how to make good budgets. They don't know that. They need that help there. And students can learn so many things from the villagers. They will know what is around you, which plants are useful to you. Today urban students even don't know from where these grains are coming. They don't know what millets are. Millets have vanished practically. They think that everything is obtained from Reliance Mall. This is the situation in urban area today. And rural students, they lack in communication, they lack articulation. So all these things can be taught to them. So hand-holding, networking, I like this idea of networking, what Dr. Manisha has been talking about. Networking between students also, within themselves, they can learn from each other, They can learn from each other, they can help each other. Not only institutional network, but even students' network also can be very well. So we hope that these study or semester outreach program can give opportunity for students to go out of their routine classroom and do something different, what they want, what they like, what they aspire for. And we hope that teachers are also able to do that. We have not yet talked about teachers because that is the most difficult community to handle in our country, quite frankly. And we need to do much more because teachers have really maybe less said is better. I don't want to talk about it. I am also teacher, but I really think that we have been harassing students by death by PowerPoints. The way in which we are giving them information, today's students don't need teachers to give information. That job is over long back, So the power of class note has been lost. Today, your information, students are much smarter than us to get information on internet, much smarter. And every day I learn from my students. So in the classroom, there has to be multiple way learning experience, which we have lost that track at all. When the moment we come in classroom, like me now talking alone for a long time, teachers go on talking, just one way dialogue. There is no dialogue, one way monologue continuously. So that students don't want that. Students really want to participate. They want to become active learners, and we must respect that youth aspiration as well inside the campus. So these are some of the aspirations which I have noticed during my experience. There are several others, but I will stop here now. And I would say that urban transformations you have connected with that is very good. But I think the divide between urban and rural also we must cement, because there are grave problems now coming up in rural areas. I think real India still to some extent exists in rural areas, but it is also under tremendous threat. So we have to protect that and bring that rural values and rural culture in urban areas so that they become more educated. That's what I feel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I'd made a phone call before he took the flight, and I'd said, sir, I'll do the uncomfortable talking and you can still be on the pleasantry. He says, no, you don't worry about that. I'll talk what I have to. So I think candor has been the hallmark of the opening statements made. May I now request Professor Pankaj Chandra, who's spoken so much and written so much about building universities that matter. And there are times when I open the book and read, there are times when I just reflect on what the title of the book is. And one of those ideas that inspires me so long, there are many that I have my bookmarks in relevant pages. Every time I read it, there are more bookmarks that I put inside. But one of the important ideas about rebuilding universities, I would say, that he has is that let's have students and learning at the center of what we have as transformed or new universities. Professor Pankaj Chandra, my honor to request you to speak.
Thank you very much, and good morning to you. Thank you, Mona, Manisha. Thanks for inviting me. And such a pleasure to be here on this campus, because Sudhir, this should be a credit to you and your colleagues to having built a absolutely wonderful and in an innovative learning environment in India, where everything seems to be very, very dull at times. And thank you, Bhushan, for very fresh thinking coming from, I mean, you are an academic at heart, but coming from a regulator, it's that much more pleasing to hear. And I hope you stay there so that all of us and our students have immense hope in times to come. I want to make three points today. And first relates to what forces are driving changes in student behavior today. And second, about student centricity. And third, a little bit about universities and the cities. We are fortunate to be located, most of our institutions within cities, and I think there are probably multiple opportunities therein to be able to create new pathways of learning. So I think that if we come to the first one, I see four very, very major forces that seem to be transforming not only our society, but institutions in a very big way. One is, of course, the demographics and the changing participation of stakeholders in society. I think long time ago, stakeholders were very involved, and I'll talk about it. The second relates to technology. The third is urbanization. And fourth is climate change. I think all four of them seem to be having some role to play in how we craft, how we behave, and how we craft educational systems. So on the society and the demographics part, I'm very bothered by the overindulgence at times or anxiety of parents that are part of a society. And I think we should not shy away from calling that part out, because it's very crucial in the way our young students in universities are starting to behave. Or at least in many cases, refusing to behave, and which is very detrimental in either way. You know, I mean, either our students are made to be the next Einstein on earth, or if they get a D or an F in a course, then they are probably, nothing is going to happen in their lives. When all of us, at least I am hopefully somewhere in the middle, neither at these extremes. And it's causing immense anxiety and strange behavior outcomes from the students, both in terms of the choices that they make of disciplines, in terms of how they want to conduct themselves, and it's reflective in large ways what are outcomes. And lots of people have talked about this issue of emotional resilience and how that is completely missing, and I attribute it very strongly to what is happening in the society. So the point I want to make is that as academics and educational institutions, we should not separate ourselves from this larger force of society. And we must see how to engage with that group to be able to address it. Related to that, which is also adding to that anxiety, is the current times, the lack of clarity on employability, jobs, and the future of work. I mean, it is very complex. And both the country is going through very major shifts, both in terms of its philosophy of what constitutes work, what constitutes government work, what is the extent of government opportunities available, which was the mainstay, as you mentioned, of large number of students coming from many segments of the society, whether right or wrong. And today also about what's happening in the private sector too. And somewhere we need to be able to address this to help a student step back a little bit and reflect on what is it that they really want to do. And that remains a challenge. Technology is helping us and our students know more, definitely know more. The breadth is definitely much, much higher. But I'm not quite sure whether it's deepening the knowledge and the reflection that is needed, both in terms of how one conducts oneself in an educational environment and also in a larger society. And that's something that we must worry about. You know, I mean, at one level, technology is, to a large number of young people, has moved away from being a source of information and knowledge to a source of entertainment. Now, there's nothing wrong with it. But if it merely is a mode of entertainment, then there's amazing amount of time that one has spent into it, and that is distracting one from creating a purpose for oneself in times to go. And that's a little bit of a challenge now. I wonder, and I've seen a few papers which also talked about an ability to concentrate and engage. And we must be very, very conscious of that fact, that how do we bring that into the focus? Because without that, how do you get young people to reflect? I'm also, even in today's environment, digital is not understood discipline-wise. So if I ask someone, I mean, we all talk about that this is the digital age. Everything is digital. But I asked colleagues and say, explain to me what's digital in chemical engineering, what's digital in how you're bringing digital in your teaching of history, or in some other, or in marketing. I think our academics are at complete loss of how this gets tied in with learning. It's not equipment, it's not PowerPoint, as you rightly mentioned, it's not about data, it's not about information, but it's very much about how you see disciplines through a very different lens that makes you look things deeper and better. And that is a challenge. The last point on those forces is there's also immense in-migration into cities. The rural youth, I mean, I grew up in small town Allahabad, and at the time, of course, when I went to study outside India, you did not have a conception of what was outside. You know, somebody told you, oh, New York was like that, you know. So you heard about New York being like that. But today, in the deepest of rural India, you can engage a kid about New York and they'll tell you the distinctiveness, because that information is available to them. That kid is no longer that same rural kid 20 years ago. And I think that in migration into the city, and it's coming together with an urban youth with a very different sensibility, and if you tie in with the social conservatism that Indian society reflects in a very, very strong way, and we saw an example in last few weeks of the debate that's happening in Bhuj. I think it creates an admixture of immense confusion in minds of young people. You don't know how do you want to see things. What is the frame through which I should, and I agree with you, we should not be the ones dictating how you should see, but there must be multiple lenses through which a society should be able, one should be able to see them, and institutions' role is to be able to create those lenses for different kind of institution with different socialization. And that is a very big challenge in running of institutions. The second point that from those stemming from that forces is, I don't know if the society or academic institutions know how to handle these forces. We've not thought enough to be able to say, well, climate change is terrible, but at the same time, our schools, colleges are open all summer. Think about it. You know, most of the time, I mean, it leads to immense consumption of energy. It leads to immense difficulties in managing organizations. But somewhere or the other, we are stuck in our mind on what is an ideal duration and location of the term in a year. It needs to change. I think there are many forces that should allow us to change the way we look at how institutions run, they function, and so on and so forth. And I don't know, we've not done enough thinking around it. In many cold climates in winter, we close down during winter for exactly that reason, to facilitate kids to not suffer at the point of time when you're coming into classroom. The second point relates to the student centricity issue, and that once again, I don't think we've paid enough attention to see how to put the student as the core of the institutional enterprise. End of the day, I don't think any one of us in an institution would be here without the student. And I think it's very, very critical to be able to think, what does that mean? I don't think we understand. We don't understand the mind of a 17-year-old today. Most of us who stand in a classroom extrapolate about the mind of the student based on when we were 17 years old and how we may have aged, and we discount somewhere through a discount factor and say that's how actually this 17-year-old will be. But this kid is different. Their socialization is different, their language is different, their conversation is different. What excites them, motivates them is very, very different. And I think unless we understand that bit, I doubt if we can become student-centric. Because student centricity is about trying to design an environment, a classroom context, in which the student gets to engage the most. In my mind, until the time a lecture and an examination remain as the key source of judging whether one has learned or not, I doubt if we can ever remain student-centric. I mean, learning has to become central, and learning implies that you have to engage. And engagement requires somebody needs to be motivated to engage. And the question is, how do I motivate this 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old to engage with issues of the time, engage with very complex, dense theories and ideas and so on and so forth, and because then only they will be able to invest the time required to learn. I don't think large majority of kids in our academic institutions across the country are spending enough time working hard to learn. I think the amount of time devoted to, and whatever that learning means, I'm by no means implying that learning only means reading out of a book, but just the idea of reflecting, reading definitely, learning to think, learning to connect, learning to do, all of those need to come to, and learning to become something very different. So that bit is challenging, and I think I am hoping, Bhushan, you remain long enough in UGC, and so that this grand standardization which brought us here because of large number of institutions actually is abandoned, and each institution is given that, has that opportunity as you've envisioned. Broad frames are defined of what constitutes overall credit. Broad frames are defined in terms of what is an outcome that a society desires. And then you leave institutions to experiment very differently. And two institutions teaching two different BA programs should be able to teach them very differently. And unless we create pathways which are very different, and I mean, I like to use this word flexible assortment, we have to customize at scale. And so that the kids coming into even a larger institutional setting are able to really create a pathway for themselves. Two kids doing BA in psychology at the same institution should be able to choose very different paths. If I am interested in social and organization versus if I'm interested in becoming a counselor. And it is doable. It is very doable, provided the emphasis is on asking institutions and asking the teachers to experiment. And imagine if they are, and then the experiments, good experiments need not happen at the most elite institutions. You will see them happening at all kinds of institutions, rural, urban, small, large, average institution, not so average institution, because experiments are done by academics and teachers. And there are good teachers in every institution, howsoever good or bad you might find. So somewhere that bit of experimentation is highly required to become very student-centric. And by student-centric, I also don't mean becoming wayward and loose and pandering. And I mean, I think the strictest of faculty member was always the most feared and admired at the same time. And so institutions can play all kind of a role. But at the same time, I just want to once again reiterate, there was a WhatsApp message that was going around attributed to Richard Feynman, which I know it was not from him, which listed about 10 things that institutions should teach. And there was people around the world who were commenting, and it was fabulous divide that you saw of people outside India in the West and those in India. Those outside kept saying, but these are issues that are related to parenting. They should be taught at home. And the commentators from India kept saying, yeah, these should be done at school. I think parenting cannot be done by school and schooling cannot be done, but both need to do both. And it's very essential for institutions to engage with this other world from where the students are coming if we want to make them centric. And the last point, I also feel that I think we've also institutionally failed to create learning here and now. A 17-year-old doesn't want you to teach them deep, dark theories and say, oh, 5 saal baad uska kaam aayega. You know, they want to learn now and they want to apply now. I mean, that's the beauty of this youth today. I mean, I'm so delighted. India is blessed with its young people. They're absolutely amazing. And it's very essential that we think about them here and now. And if you engage with them here and now, I think there's a lot of opportunity to capture their imagination and build the kind of capabilities that you want as an institution to build within them. And there, I think the cities provide a fabulous learning laboratory. A city is accessible. A city has challenges. A city has complex problems. A city lends itself to myriad of multidisciplinary interventions. A city is easy to navigate many a times for a class project. And I was just thinking, you know, if a class in epidemiology and a class in sociology of bazaars can have a common project, which is essentially to see how does hygiene and food wastage, do they play a role at all in buildup of infectious diseases, which is a very big challenge in many of our cities. So I think as soon as we start seeing ourselves in that role and city as a lab and us getting out from the classroom into a bigger proscenium, I think our ability to engage with this young increases very dramatically. Whether successfully or not, I don't know, but it increases definitely in our ability for them to engage with us. Thank you.
That's awesome, absolutely. Without much ado, I'll request Professor Sudhir Jain, thanking him once again for this very kind opportunity for all of us to come together on a shared platform. And we do have visions of going forward and going forward together. What does strike me, though, in Professor Jain's absolutely fabulous CV, which also has a Padma Award added onto it, that his core strengths are in 2 areas that we really need. Earthquake management, that's what universities are like, and the young ones, but also building bridges. So I think both of these together will give us some guiding light on how we need to deliberate forward. Professor Jain, may I now request you to.
Thank you. So my two other eminent colleagues have covered many very, very important points. I will just try to summarize my thoughts on three key ideas. One is about employability of our young people. The second is about curriculum in the university. Some of that has been discussed already. And the third is about the culture or the lack of culture in our education institution. So let's look at employability. I raised IIT Gandhinagar in 2009 when there were 4 daily wager employees and a retired Major General of Indian Army. That is what I inherited here. And I hired a lot of people. What did I look for in those people? Did I look for what did they know? What did they subject? If I was hiring somebody in accounts, was I looking for somebody who knows accounts? If I was hiring an engineer, was I looking for how much engineering does he know? Sorry, no. I was looking for what kind of values this person brings to me. If he's a crook, he's useless to me. If he's going to take bribes, he's useless to me. If he's going to lie to me, he's useless to me. I was looking for attitude, right? If he has a poor attitude, again, he can be honest, but he's useless to me. I was looking for certain life skills, certain communication, certain relationship building, certain way to deal with people. And if somebody met all three and knew some engineering or accounts, I was happy to hire him because I thought I can teach him engineering or I can teach him accounts if he has first three. But if he has a poor attitude, there is nothing I can do. If there is a poor values, I can do it. I extend that idea to employability. Today, give me young boys and girls who bring me these 3 attributes. I will hire them on the spot, on a contract job, not as a permanent employee. I cannot do that. I'm in short supply of those people, right? In many of my meetings and speeches of this kind, I make people raise hand and say, how many of you are struggling or you know of somebody who is struggling to find a decent private driver? And invariably, a lot of people raise their hands. There are a lot of people who know how to drive, but they don't have those first 3 attributes. And therefore, somebody joins and within 15 days is fired. And after 3 times of firing, the guy says, I would rather live without a driver and I can drive myself, right? To my mind, if we have to look at our youth and its employability, we must recognize that there is something very basically lacking in our youth today, and we must take responsibility of that as a university. I don't agree with this, that this is something parents should do. I think anything that will help my young people, I have to do. If parents haven't done it, too bad, I have to do it. Having said that, how do you solve it from the university when the vice chancellors are appointed on Sifarish? When you expect people to be making phone calls for giving you a fellowship or giving you an award. Recently, there was a scholar from Tamil Nadu and she and I were talking and she said, oh, Tamil Nadu mein to vice chancellor ka rate hai. How many rupees it costs to become a vice chancellor? In fact, Professor Anand Krishnan, the former professor of IIT Kanpur and former chairman of the board of IIT Kanpur, had a very famously made a public statement that came in newspapers about 6-7 years back, saying in Tamil Nadu, this is the rate for vice chancellorship. Now, if this is the level of integrity in our universities, there is no way our youth can be expected to have the values, the attitude, that discipline. If this is how the vice chancellor is appointed, how do you expect the faculty to be appointed on merit? And if faculty is appointed like that, how do you expect them to deal with a student on merit? And how do you expect that our youth will come on time? If there is a meeting there in today's India, how many people will come on time? Right? With some of my colleagues, I have a standard joke. Which of my faculty member will enter into the room 30 minutes later and which one will come 15 minutes later? Because after a while, these days machines are learning, artificial learning, I'm also learning. I can learn. Which of my colleagues will come late? One day we were arguing whether our meeting should be lasting 3 hours or 2 hours. So one of my senior colleagues was insisting, no meeting should last more than 2 hours. I said, what are you talking? Abhi 30 minutes tak to log aayenge yahan par. I said, the meeting will not start in earnest for 30 minutes after the scheduled time. You are talking about discussion time of 2 hours, half an hour will come in just collecting people. If our teachers are not going to insist on our students to come on time, how will those students, when they become teachers, will come on time? And when they become vice chancellors, how will they do things in time? I think there is a big elephant in our room that none of us are talking about. And that is a single word, integrity. Integrity in everything that we do. In everything that we do. It is not only about taking bribes. And by the way, of late, we have found vice chancellors in financial difficulties. We have found vice chancellors who have faked their credentials. If you see number of vice chancellors that have had to be let go in last 10 years in India, perhaps that might exceed the number of vice chancellors that were let go in previous 50 years. Where are we going? So, let me just share one note here. 2.5 years back, the then HRD minister was in our campus, spent the whole day. And in one of the formal meetings with my faculty, he made a very interesting remark. He said, ever since I have become the minister, I never received a single call asking for sifarish in an IIT job. But if any of my other universities governed by central government has any recruitment at any level, I'm flooded with sifarish. I'm asked to interview. I think today, if country looks up to IIT system, it is for some magical reason, and I have never understood it. I hope my social science colleagues in IIT Gandhinagar will find it a very interesting research problem. How is it that IIT system, for whatever reasons, over 60, 70 years, has been able to maintain a certain integrity in student admissions, in student evaluations, in faculty recruitment? I think these three things I would have absolute confidence. Different IIT directors can have different benchmarks of recruitment. Somebody will say this guy is good enough to be hired. Somebody will say he's useless. Why are you hiring? That part can happen. But it will not happen that you are hiring somebody because he's a Jain or he's a Jat or he's a Jata or whatever it is. Right? It will not happen that somebody is being hired as a faculty because somebody made a sifarishi phone call. Right? In my long years, I have only heard through third parties an IIT director being told to somebody, and I have not heard from that IIT director, saying that in my 11 or 10 years as a director, only for this particular gentleman, I received a phone call asking for his promotion. Right? If a vice chancellor in university can make that statement, I'll be delighted. Right? So, to my mind, integrity, you bring integrity in our universities, I think our youth will become employable. Very simple, very simplistic, maybe fairly trivial, maybe too simplistic, but I think this is something that I feel very concerned about. The second, as other two speakers have already talked about, is curriculum, information versus problem solving, thinking, and all that stuff, right? Today, the challenge is that your senior government officers even can't comprehend, can't write. And again, a very interesting social science problem here. Look at the statutes of IITs written in 1950s and look at the statutes of any institutions developed in last 10 or 15 years. Statutes of the NITs, statutes of the triple ITs. The quality of drafting is so bad. I ran 1.5 years NIT Surat as an additional charge. And you know the kind of conditions that statutes had. There is no way I can run the institute without violating the statutes. What are the conditions? The director can appoint anybody head of the department from outside the discipline for not more than 6 months. No person can remain head of the department for more than so many years. And the person who can be head has to be at least associate professor. Madam, what do I do if I have only one associate professor in a department and he has finished the quota of so many years? and I finish the quota of 6 months of making a head from outside, I have to violate one of those 3 conditions. This is the quality of drafting our worthy bureaucrats and academic leaders are today doing because of this poor education, right? Because we are not teaching them problem solving, we are not teaching them thinking, we are not teaching them to learn. As our previous speaker said, that we are telling them this is the curriculum, we are telling them this is the question bank, we are telling them this is the answer, and if the answer you are writing back in the answer book is matching with my answer, you have passed, otherwise you have not passed. And these are the kids then who grow into adulthood. These are the ones who take on government positions. These are the ones who become industry leaders. We at IIT Gandhinagar have been very particular about it. We have tried to resolve it in many, many ways. Starting with the 5-week foundation program. When a new undergraduate comes, we just run a boot camp for 5 weeks, 6:30 to 9:30 in the night, no classes, unlearn everything, build your values, build your attitude. Our Explorer Fellowship, what Professor Patwardhan was saying, in a different format, where our students travel for 6 weeks, length and breadth of India, on a 900 rupees per day budget for food, for lodging, for train tickets, for sightseeing. They have to go to Northeast India, they have to go to North India, they have to go to South India. The autonomy that we give to students, the trust we put on students, and the accountability we hold to our students. You know, we had 2 years back to take a decision where we put 3 top elected leaders of IIT Gandhinagar student body, top 3 elected leaders on a 1-year suspension. Not a single parent came to talk to us. There was a year in which 9% of my entire student body was on a semester drop. Not a single parent came to see me. Not a single newspaper, Ahmedabad Mirror, Times of India, Indian Express, you know, there are a lot of so many newspapers in Ahmedabad. Not a single newspaper carried a news on any of these items. Because it is very clear to the student body, the amount of autonomy and trust that IIT Gandhinagar gives you, it also expects certain level of accountability. And if you violate that level of accountability, you will have to bear the consequences. And we encourage them to bear those consequences as adults. Don't bring your parents. Don't bring Safarish. This is the second idea, I think. We need to look at how we deal with our students. How do we create the environment? I would not worry about what is it that they are learning, how many courses of engineering, how many courses of physics, how many courses of social sciences. To me, these are relatively minor. What Pankaj said, how many hours they are spending on the internet. The internet has become the opium of 21st century. The number of hours that a young student or adults, why students? The professors, right? I would say if we were to tell only campuses like IIT Gandhinagar that everybody's internet usage will be public domain, you will see what a ruckus it is. The third idea that I want to talk to you about is culture. I'm a publicly funded institution. Who gives me money? The bureaucrats give money. Since they give me money, they have more wisdom than I have in running the university. I don't tell them how to govern the country. I don't tell Army General how to fight the war. I don't tell police officer how to control the law and order. They all come and tell me how to run the university. Right? Why? Because they've gone to college when they were 17-year-old. I'm an idiot. For 36 years, I'm running in the teaching business, but I know nothing. Because they give me the money. If I go to a donor, if I go to a corporate leader, he tells me how to run the university. I don't tell him how to do business. Right? Now we have a very interesting tension now. My funding agency wants me to behave like a government. My donor wants me to behave like a corporate. And I challenge them that, look, the day you run a university like government, it's gone. The day you run a university like corporation, it is gone. Just the way, the day you run a government like a corporation, it will be gone. The way government is to be run is entirely different the way business is run. And the way university should be run is entirely different from the way the government or the corporation should. But who writes my policies? The people who write policies are only aware of one system. Everything that I must do has to be within the framework which is applicable to civil servants. When you hire a police inspector, you want to give him a job security very early, because if he catches a crook, he will be fired by the political masters, right? Because the crook is a relative of the political master. So that police inspector has to be given job security. Now we are running IIT system on a job security of 1 year. Somebody comes as an academic colleague and in 1 year you give him or her a job security for life. This is my governance model. Where in the world, which universities? All my top politicians say we have to be top 100 university. Please tell me out of top 100 universities, which 100 universities, out of 100 universities, how many of them will give job security to an academic after 1 year? I want to hear if even there are 5 universities. Right? Now, all right, that is a problem that we are getting from external sources. We academics are suffering from others. But what about we within academics? What about university to university? There is no uniformity in values and culture. If 2 IIT directors sit down together, they would not agree on anything. I'm talking about policies, I'm talking about culture, I'm talking about values. One IIT director will say, if a student is cheating in the exam, punish him severely. The other guy will say, cheating chalta rehta hai. Right? In one IIT, they will say, boys and girls should be separated in 2 different jails. In another IIT, they will say, it is a totally open jail. There is nothing to prevent boys and girls into mixing with each other. There is somewhere where vice chancellor is, or director, not vice chancellor, I'm talking about IIT directors. There will be places where director will say, students should not meet me. And there will be another place where director might be smoking cigarette with the students. And so on and so forth, right? There is just no uniformity in values and culture, even across IITs. Forget about IIT Gandhinagar versus the Central University of Gujarat. I'm not even talking about that. But within the IIT, if you go to mechanical engineering versus humanities versus civil engineering, again there is a variation. And when there is a director changes, there is again total. You are just totally confusing your faculty. You are confusing your students. They don't know what is in store for them. If 2 American university presidents meet, they will not have disagreements on basic values and basic culture. Their standards might be different. One university may find that this colleague is not good enough to give tenure, but the other university will jump and take this person and give him tenure, right? That standards will vary. But the fact that tenure should be on merit, there will be no difference. In my IIT system, there will be directors who will say, everybody is doing hard work, promote everybody. And another person will say, no, we have to be very merit-based. You cannot run a university system in a large country like that. In fact, 3 days back, there was a selection committee and an expert who came from one of the IITs had done a PhD in an IIT. And he made a very profound statement. He said, you know what, when I was a student in such and such IIT, I had several of these professors who did not do active research, but they were on top with the frontiers of that subject. They taught us extremely well and they inspired us. It was absolutely delightful statement to hear. In order for a teacher to inspire a student, the first prerequisite is for him to be interested in the student. Second is to be on top of that knowledge. Now we have said, no, he will be on top of knowledge only if he publishes papers. Right? There is a total confusion about what is research, what is the significance of teaching versus research. There are IIT professors who are telling young assistant professors, don't focus on teaching, don't focus on surveys, don't focus on responsibilities and committees because only research will count. There are other IIT directors who are saying, no, all 3 are important. I mean, what are you doing with the young faculty, right? So, to my mind, if you have aspiration to be in the top 100 universities that our country is aspiring for, our topmost political leadership is asking for, I think we need to think a little bit deeper about how we are running our universities and how we are running ourselves. Thank you.
Before we close, I'm going to just move over for one comment and question from a teacher, a professor. The point about trust, accountability, and time takes me back in time to about 16 years ago when I stood outside a door with my research notes that were going to form perhaps a chapter. So when I knock at the door and my supervisor is inside, he looks at his watch and he says, "Oh, I'm writing, and you are here ahead of time." And he looked back and he said, 3 minutes ahead of time. So I went out and I sat and I said, "Oh, my teacher's writing something. Let me give him 3 minutes extra." So I came back and he said, "First you were before time, and now you are behind time." And before I could say anything, he said, "I have read what you sent, and I have 53 comments for you." And I think the most difficult thing for me was to tear up that note sheet, which had those 53 points. May I now request Professor John Harris to give a few comments on what he's heard so far, and I'll request the panel for one round of closing comments, and that will be our formal closure. But thank you, Professor Sudhir Jain, for such an open and from the heart conversation this morning. Professor John Harris.
Is this on? Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. It's been an extraordinarily rich discussion, and I think there's a material in what you have said for us to spend the rest of the day in discussion of points that have come up. And there's so much that I would like to respond to or comment on, not least those last remarks that Professor Jain, you were making about the tension of teaching and research and the absurdity of the way in which so much pressure is put on university teachers, certainly in North America and the UK, to publish. Some pressure to publish may be, but it's got to be utterly ridiculous. And so much lip service is paid to the importance of teaching, but so little done about it. But anyway, I'm sorry, I should have resisted saying that. Just one comment, and then one question, if I may. The comment is simply this. I think that the higher education system in India historically was really very much modeled on that of the UK. And although quite a lot of change has come about in the recent past, there's still a lot in the system which is like that of the UK. And the UK actually asked us kids to decide on our subjects, on our specialisms very early. I was asked basically age 13 to choose whether I was going to do sciences or humanities. In the last 15 years, I have experience of teaching in North America. To begin with, I have to say that I found it somewhat frustrating when I was sort of teaching fourth-year students, fourth-year undergraduates, in some course perhaps on sociology. And I find that they actually know very little sociological theory or whatever, because they haven't come through the specialized kind of education that I experienced and that so many kids still experience in Britain. In the end, I think I have come round to actually rather favor the North American system that encourages kids to, yes, and requires them actually to keep studying science, humanities, and to expose themselves to different disciplines and different ways of thinking. And I'm just sort of wondering whether there isn't perhaps here still a need for a move in that sort of direction, not to sort of, be expecting students to be specializing as economists or sociologists or physicists or whatever as they go into their first degree. My question is, and so much that Dr. Patwardhan you said delighted me, and I thought was really really splendid. But I was left with a very, very big question. It's a big question, I think, which relates also to points that both the other speakers made. And that is, how do you how do you think it's possible to actually change the culture of teaching in this country, given that it seems to me, from what I have observed, that at all levels there has been historically such a culture of the teacher being the one who actually sort of, as it were, lays down the law. This is what you must think, not just information, but this is how you should think. How do you change? And I think, Dr. Patwardhan, what you're looking for is a very big change in the culture of teaching. How is that change in culture to be brought about? I just sort of wonder what you think about that. Or perhaps you think I'm wrong, that I understand, or my perception of the culture of teaching is wrong.
It's a loaded question, but thanks for your comments. And and there is no straight answer to that. But if I would have all the freedom to do, some 2-3 things I will do. That's what I will tell you. First thing I will do, I will scrap the current eligibility examination of teachers. What we call it as NET, National Eligibility Test. Because the kind of questions we ask to make them eligible, I don't think they're right. Something we think that by passing that test, they are eligible to become teachers. Second is the condition that the moment you become PhD, you can become teacher. This is another condition which Dr. Jain also mentioned, creates a desperation to do research, and then it leads to some fake research and kind of thing. Third thing, I personally think that if teachers don't change, and we are doing this at all levels, I'm communicating with teachers all through, but it's so difficult to communicate with them, and what he said is so right. The moment you become permanent in our system, we lose all interest. So something can be done to keep that competitiveness and periodical assessment to keep that inquisitiveness in the teacher living. That is a big challenge. And I personally think that if teachers don't change, they will get extinct automatically, because it is not very far. Already in some places people have started doing that. In India, I saw that one of the school in Bangalore is bringing robot in teach. If teacher's job will remain only to give information, robots will be able to do it much faster and much better than you. So if you are restricting, and today by and large teachers' job, they are restricting themselves of giving information, not making sense of that information, not by putting their own, not like what Professor Pankaj Chandra said. All those things, they are not really involved by and large. And when I am speaking, I am not talking about IIT teachers or top institutions teacher. I am talking about teachers who are there in the base of the pyramid. I am talking teachers who are teaching BA, BSc, BCom courses in colleges, which forms almost 70% of our entire population. So the situation of teachers there to change is really a big challenge, and we'll have to make some basic fundamental changes, which generally we know what they should be, but they are equally difficult to implement them.
No, I think Professor Patwardhan has already said very clearly, if I have the freedom. I said the reason IITs did well, one of them was integrity, but I think second thing that I should add was the autonomy. The parliament provided certain autonomy to IIT system, which was unprecedented in Indian academia and remains unprecedented in Indian academia. Which means I and my colleagues can sit together and write anything that we want to be the graduation requirement, to be the curriculum, what we will teach, how we will grade. the entire autonomy is in this campus. We don't need to go to Delhi, we don't need to go to other IITs, we don't need to go to anybody else. And I think that has enabled different IITs to experiment with different ideas, and some of those have worked very well. In fact, if any one of you would have time, I would say go to hostels and talk to our students and get a sense of how we run our educational programs. And I think there is a lot of good stuff. We have a problem. We have a problem because our students, our faculty members, they are getting infected with different ideas from the rest of the system, right? So my PhD student comes to me and he says, why are you insisting that I should learn writing? Because IIT X and IIT Y, which are 60 years old, they don't ask you to learn writing. यार बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है, आपको लिखना सिखा रहे हैं तो बहुत दिक्कत है इसमें. हाँ सब बहुत दिक्कत है, लिखना नहीं सीखना चाहते हैं, PhD करेंगे, right? To my mind, the kind of car we are driving at IIT Gandhinagar is like with a handbrake on. What is the handbrake? Handbrake is the rest of the system. Because my young faculty member has his mentor sitting elsewhere who is giving him or her wrong advice. My student has come from another college from where he has brought wrong values. So to answer your question, I think fixing education is a relatively easier thing than fixing economy or many other things, right? Provided you have the intentions to do so, and provided you are willing to make mistakes. We tried many things, some things work, some things don't work. In education, it is very easy to undo things. I can't undo this building. Once this building has been built, I can't erase it. But I can change my curriculum next year. I can change the way I taught the class next year. And provided the system is not unduly restrictive. In my case, I think I was very lucky to have grown in IIT system where we had a lot of flexibility. Not many academics have that kind of a luxury, I would say. If only that kind of a freedom could be available to others, I will bet that a lot more can be done. Thank you.
Let me specifically answer the question that you asked. You know, new institutions, for instance, the one that I come from, I think if we have immense autonomy and outcomes, and if we are not able to deliver, then I think there's something wrong intrinsically with us. And so that's one part. I have a feeling that two parts to this, to address this question. One is we have enormous penchants to focus on content at the cost of pedagogy. And engagement happens through pedagogy. We just focus very little on pedagogy. It's very important for many teachers around the country to say, I'm not finished my course. I need to somehow race through to finish. But nobody says you have to finish. Better to do three things very well than to do 21 things and do all of them in a hurried manner. And how you do it, which engages the student to be able to ask the question and be curious. I think that's point number one, which needs to be very strongly built into institutional culture through many interventions. The second is about teachers. Indian academic institutions have very poor teachers. Good people don't want to come to Indian higher education and become teachers. And I think until and unless there's effort to draw the best and brightest who are most inspirational back into teaching, I think this will not work because there's a structural problem. And there's this whole structure, conduct, performance kind of a story that if you want to change outcomes, you have to change the structure. And the structural, this is one very important structural challenge. Large number of people who come to teach in academic institutions in India are below average. There's no way they can inspire young people. And if you don't inspire young people, why should they waste their time sitting in my class? They'll hang around outside with mobile phones and everything else. And last, I think managerially, I'm a professor of management. So if I want to look at how do I now execute this? The only way to execute is to give enough autonomy to institutions and freedom so that the best amongst them can run away. Because there are lots of very good institutions in this country. There are lots of institutions where interesting experiments are happening. So if you just tell them, okay, you're on your own, they'll run away. The better ones will run away, and the rest will then, they become exemplars for many others. And over 2 decades or 3 decades, I think things will change very dramatically. But unless we allow people, these institutions to have wings, it'll be very difficult to experiment. And if we don't experiment, very difficult to change.
So this is a sincere invocation to the deliberations that will happen hereafter, absolutely open and in a continuous pursuit of breaking down certitudes if there were any. Nothing is certain. And most certainly, we will question the arrogation of hierarchies wherever they are, either in categories of understanding the youth or their aspirations, or in what we do in our practice of education, of higher education. The pursuit in the deliberations will be a continuous falsification of the ideas that we inherit, whether we call them ideas of the structure, or we call them an arrogation of hierarchy within the agency. And with that, I would like to not close this session, but invite us to more conversations and to a cup of tea in the room right outside. Thank you once again for being here with us, and we are absolutely honored and delighted to have this stellar leadership for our opening invocation. Thank you.